Well, hello there. Thanks for your purchase of your custom air vise, where every purchase that you make helps take another handicapped kid on a great adventure, or build the equipment that they need so that they can go on that adventure. We do a lot of fishing around Wyoming, mainly walleye, bass, we got some pike, and a lot of trout and salmon. So, yeah, they have a lot of fun, and your purchase has greatly helped with that. So, thank you. In this video, I'm going to walk you around your new air vise and give you some tips and tricks and some basic instructions on how to use it. So, let me get you down here to the bench where your air vise is. Parts of your air vise. I have some molds sitting in it on the rails. Now on those rails is the tail stock or the backstop of your air vise. Up here you have the head of the air vise, and these are your air cylinders, your pneumatic cylinders. So the way an air vise works is it takes air, pneumatic air, and it gives it a clamping force. The reason they work so well is when you picture the clamps that you've used in the past, whether those are the little squeeze handle hand clamps or the spring clamps or whatever it is, they're kind of a pain in the rump, but when you think about it, a spring clamp will clamp these molds at about 8 to 12 psi depending on the size of the clamp. The bar clamps where you squeeze the handle to close them up, those will usually get up around 18 to about 25 psi of clamping force. Okay, the bar clamps where you turn the knob, okay, those will get somewhere between 20 and 28 psi of clamping force. So you do not need really a lot of clamping force, but you need consistent clamping force. The problem with doing a lot of clamping force is when you look at these molds, they have these little tiny air vents, and they're big here. Let me get my 8-bit pointer. But right there where it connects from the arm of this claw up to that larger air vent is this really small, about a 3/1000 deep air vent. And you can see them all along the back and the bottom. They're all over. Every leg has one. And when you're talking 3/1000s, that's 1/3 the size of your hair. So very, very small. And when you put these together and you send 125 psi through this air clamp, it's going to squeeze that so tight you'll block off those air vents and you won't get very good injections. So I recommend you always start at about 30 psi and go up depending on your molds. Okay, so what do I mean by start at 35 psi or 30 psi? Let's get down here and take a look at what we have. So on the back of your air vise you have the air switch. Okay, when you lift up on the switch, it is going to extend the cylinders or clamp your molds. When you push down, it will retract the cylinders or release your molds. Now I do it this way in case you've got wee little hands running around like I do. I've got 7 grandkids and they love to come hang out with Grandpa and touch every cool thing he has, and the first thing they're doing is this. Okay, also if you were over here and this is clamped in the up position and for some reason your cup starts to move or something happens where you have to move really quickly and you bump that switch down, it's going to release and not pinch your fingers. You do not want to get your fingers pinched. Now next to the air switch we have the air regulator. So you'll hook your air hose up to this swivel here. Now this swivel will move in any direction you need it to move. Okay, that makes it very easy to connect up your hose and then run your hose to where it's not in your way of your cups and your injectors and everything you're doing. I would suggest you hold this while you're putting that on. Let me show you what I mean. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your air hose, and you have a female end on it like this. You'll pull that collar back, hold here, push that air hose on until, and once you get it about halfway on, you can let go of that and see it stays back until you get it the rest of the way on, where it will snap back forward, locking it on to your male air fitting here. Okay, now if you're having trouble pushing this on and getting it to stay, disconnect the air hose from the air compressor. That way you don't have any pressure on it. Connect this up, then reconnect to the air compressor and turn the air compressor on. Now, setting these is very easy. You'll notice you have a gauge here. All you do is you lift on this, you'll hear it click. Once you lift on this, you can turn it. Clockwise will increase your air pressure this way. Counterclockwise this way will decrease your air pressure. Now, if you're decreasing your air pressure, you will need to work your air switch a few times to get the air released out of the system. Okay, do this before you put your molds in your vise. Okay, if you're increasing, you can have the molds in the vise and that won't be a problem. Okay, now we're back over here above your air vise looking down. You'll notice there's these socket head cap screws on the back of your tailstock. You'll put your Allen wrench in there, and you only need to give these about a quarter to a half of a turn to loosen them. Okay, once you have them all loose, you can also bump down slightly on that, and that will release that nut. What these do is there's a nut inside the track, okay, that's kind of long, and it has a little ball on it. So that ball is spring loaded. When you push down, you're riding on that ball instead of the nuts grabbing the rails. So once you have it loose, you simply put your 1/2-inch plate that came with your kit, okay, up against either the tailstock. You can put it up against your air vise, it doesn't matter where. All this plate is going to do is keep everything square to your cylinders. That's where it's very important. If your molds in your tailstock are at a slight angle, your molds will flash on one side or the other. Okay, as long as they're in there square, you won't flash. Okay, once you have your spacer plate in there, the number of molds that you generally do. Now, if you usually do 4, on occasion 3, put 4 molds in. When you're doing 3, turn 1 mold over so that you can't shoot it. And now you're always at the same setting and you don't have to reset this tailstock very often. I find that if I set mine at about 4 molds, that is 1 10-ounce injector, or if you're using dual injector, it's a 6-ounce injector full, is about all you can get out of 4 molds generally. So it depends. Some of the molds are quite small and they don't take very much, kind of like this down here. These just barely take anything, so I could probably get away with 4 large molds. Once you have your molds in place and your block in place, you're going to slide this up snug. That's all you need to do, is snug it up, tighten one in this corner slightly. You don't have to get them very tight. And one in this corner slightly. That's going to hold everything from moving while you work with the rest. Now, this is kind of important. Those nuts need to center, and if you went very far, if you made a full turn or maybe a turn and a half to loosen these, that nut will be down out of this rail, and so you need to realign it, and that's done by, once you feel it touching, just start wiggling and you'll find you can get a little bit more turn on there. This isn't super important, but it does help. See how I got a little more out of that one? and you'll feel it touch. Give it a couple wiggles, and then you'll get that last little bit out of it. And all you're doing is there's a slight raised area on that nut, and you're getting it up inside that channel so that everything's nice and straight and pretty. There we go. Now once you're at this part and you have all of these somewhat snugged, you're going to go and just give them just a little bit more. They don't need to be extremely tight. You have 8 bolts holding this down. It's not going to move. You could probably clamp this without it moving with 2 bolts, but if 2 bolts is good, 8 bolts must be better. And I do this so that you don't have to clamp it tight. That's why I put so many on here. If you clamp that really tight, this is soft aluminum, and you will find that those nuts will start to put little dents inside that track, and then it won't want to move very well. So when you're moving this, loosen it up, half, 3/4 turn, give it a bump down, and then you'll have to jiggle it to move it back. It'll push forward very easily, and that's because the design of the nuts. When these nuts are installed in your vise, they're sitting like this. So you can see that the hole, the threaded hole, is off to one side of the nut, and that's done by intention, okay? That's so that you can release these and move these fairly easily. If they were right in the center, it wouldn't want to move very well. And like I mentioned, this is a spring-loaded ball, so when you bump that down, you're going to come down against that ball, and it's going to act like a bearing and help this nut slide in that track a little easier. Okay, these do not need to be very tight. You do not need 2 hands. You don't need to reef on them. Just snug. Okay, a good snugging, and I usually go, and once I have them all snugged, I just make sure that they feel about the same tension. There you go. Now this is made very heavy, okay? You have a 5/8 plate here that rides up against your molds. This is a 1-inch solid plate. I do that intentionally because that helps keep this track flat and square, okay? This I have squared up for you. It is tight. It will never move, and you should never loosen that up and try to move it. Okay, if you're having problems with your air vise, call me or send me an email and we'll go through it, because there's nothing on this vise that would make you have to move this. Okay, as long as this stays squares to the track, you can square up your molds against it, then your tailstock will be square. So we have this in here, everything's square. You've snugged down the bolts on your tailstock. Now you remove this 1/2-inch plate. Okay, this allows your cylinders to work, and it allows you to easily get your molds in and out of there, to open them up and take out the new prize baits that you've just made. Okay, little tips and tricks. You're going to start out at about 30 to 35 psi. That's about where it's set when I tested it, okay, to make sure everything was working right. What you want to do is lift your switch so that it's clamped. Make sure you never put your fingers or anything in there. Keep your hair out of it. I mean, it can be bad. So once you have the switch lift, everything's clamped, you're going to grab those molds and just try to move them. They're loose now, so they'll move. When they're clamped, they should not move. You should be able to give that a pretty hard, steady pull, and your molds won't move. If they move, simply increase it by about 5 psi. Okay, it's not going to take very much to hold this. I would think between 30 and 40 psi, depending on your mold configuration. is going to be more than sufficient. You should never ever go above 90. Once you go above 90, not only is it hard on the components of the air vise, it's really hard on those molds, which are a huge investment. So in addition to the 1/2-inch plate that came with your vise, you will have a set of blocks. These blocks are your shim blocks. So when you have a mold that sets low in your vise like this one does, you ideally want the center of the molds approximately center of where those cylinders are. You can see this mold's quite low, so it may flash down at the bottom. This can be easily raised simply by putting a wooden block in there and lifting it up. I would not suggest, however, at any time that you start stacking a bunch of blocks to get this up there to the height of the other molds, because now you're only clamping the bottom of that mold, you're not clamping the top, and it could flash at the top of the mold. So if your mold is flashing at the top, lower it down a little bit. If your mold is flashing at the bottom, raise it up a little bit. If your molds are flashing on either side, you're not square in your tailpiece. So how then do we do this if we want to raise this mold? Now you'll notice this one, these are all 3/4 inch thick, but this one is 1 inch deep and 3/4 inch. So 3/4 inch may do it depending on your mold. You may need to turn it to the 1 inch. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have that centered. It doesn't need to be the thickness of the mold. You can actually angle that just a little bit and you're still going to hold that mold up. All this is doing is holding it up until it's clamped. Once it's clamped, you could technically take that block out if you could get it out. But we'll set our mold in there and you can see it still isn't quite tall enough. That can be easily remedied by, once again, setting that block at a slight angle. Set your mold in there. Now drop that 1/2 inch plate back down in there. And with that 1/2 inch plate in there, now you've got enough space, you can get your injectors on there. If you're using a jewel injector, you'll have to line it up this way. It won't line up that way. If that's the case, try to match that height with all your molds. In other words, take the really tall molds out and use the slightly shorter molds for that run. For the most part, if you're using a single injector, this setup that you have right here is perfectly fine. Mold configuration, the way you put your molds in your vise, is also very important. So if you look, I have a wide mold, but it's very short right here by the vise. Then we go to tall molds, then we go to a narrow mold that's tall, okay? This is okay and it'll clamp, but you would actually clamp a lot better if you moved it to this configuration. So now when you apply pressure, you're gonna get a full width of pressure here. This mold will have a full width of pressure on both sides, and then this mold will have pressure on the back side of full width and on the front side as wide as this is. As long as you're at least 60% the width of the widest mold, you're going to be fine. If you have one of those Kirby molds, or if you get like the 16-inch worm, where that's a very long mold, you can clamp it in your air vise, but center it up and still put a few clamps out on the ends, okay? Because you're not clamping those ends at all. They don't have any pressure against them, so they may flash towards the end. You can eliminate that by simply putting your clamps in on the ends. Maintenance of your air vise, very simple. Take and I have a air blowgun, and so when I'm done at the end of the day, you'll have little drips of plastisol on the aluminum. They'll come off very easy. And so what I do is I take my blowgun and I run my hose out the door and I point the mold up over the shrubs towards the neighbor's house, and I simply blow all that loose plastisol off. After a couple of years, they'll have nice plastisol lawn, multicolored. Other than that, this is pretty much will take care of itself. Okay, down on the bottom of this right here underneath your regulator is an air dryer. This mold needs very dry air, so this will trap any moisture, especially if you live in a humid area. The nice thing is, you notice it won't move. Well, it will. When you apply air, it pulls down. I don't know if you can really see that very well, but it will pull down. When you release the air at the end of the day, it will pop up, and any moisture that's accumulated in there will drain out and dry up. And then this will dry up, and that keeps everything dry in your system. Now, if you notice that this is starting to get a lot of moisture, at the end of the day, I would just lay a paper towel underneath there, or, you know, take a little pop bottle and cut it off to trap that water that's coming out of that. Here in Wyoming, not really a problem. We're very dry, but if you live down in Florida, right off the ocean, you're probably going to see water every day. So other than that, you know, your airlines are pretty secure where they're at. So you shouldn't really have any problems unless you're using a torch to warm your molds and you hit these lines and melt them. The good news is you can simply go down to your local lumber yard and buy this. This is 1/4 inch polyvinyl line. So it's hard line. It's not the soft squishy line that they use on fish tanks. This is a very stiff line like you would use on your water and ice maker for your refrigerator. So you need to replace it with that. To replace it is quite simple. Pull back on this ring and pull out on the hose, and it'll come right out. Other than that, as long as you just keep it clean, you won't ever experience any problems with it. So if you've been over tightening this back here and you start to see little dents in your rails that make it really hard to move, you can simply take a file and lay it in that track and file out those dents, and it won't take very much. They'll come out very quickly and very easily. So once again, thank you for your purchase of the air vise. It goes a long ways to taking a kid on a great adventure, and I think you'll enjoy it for many, many years to come. So they are a blessing. They really work much better than clamps ever will. You'll have less problems, and your bait making will be less frustrating and much faster. So then it'll be more enjoyable. So if you ever have any problems, please call me or email me, and we will address those problems and get you taken care of right away. Thank you again. Happy bait making and tight lines.